Chapter 3. Gayness in History. Where did homosexuality originate, and how did it evolve through time?
Someone once told me that the ancient Greeks invented it because they thought women were unclean and should only be used for procreation. Well, that's just rude. Silly humans. My, how times have changed.
Origins. Homosexuality began with the creation of sex. Humankind as a whole has changed its overall opinion on homosexuality several times throughout history. Same-sex relations have gone from widely encouraged to just accepted, and eventually, in some societies, an executional crime. Past views on sexuality were never set in stone, as many preferences were on a case-by-case basis. Historical figures like Alexander the Great, William Shakespeare, and Socrates were all known for sexual diversity. In 12th century England, the word gay rooted from the French word gay, which meant joyful or bright and showy. Around the 17th century, however, the word was commonly linked to dishonorable conduct, overindulgence, promiscuity, and a carefree temperament. The term gayet arose in the 19th century, which meant to have sex, and ironically, alluded to a man who had many female partners. It wasn't until the 1950s when the word became what it means today. Celebrity quote: "When women got the vote, they did not redefine voting. When African Americans got the right to sit at a lunch counter alongside white people, they did not redefine eating out. They were simply invited to the table. That is all we want to do. We have no desire to change marriage. We want to be entitled to not only the same privileges, but the same responsibilities as straight people." Cynthia Nixon. Africa. Early accounts of homosexuality were first recorded in Egypt. Much debate surrounds the relationship between Numhotep and Nyankhnum, royal confidants, often depicted in the nose-kissing position, one of the most intimate Egyptian poses. There are arguments that state the two are simply twin brothers, as they both were reported to have wives. Some even say that they are gay twin brothers. The theories vary depending on who you ask. However, as discussed previously in this chapter, sexuality was never a permanent stamp. Like today, many gay men and women did and can produce offspring. Some even have straight spouses. Many tend to blame homosexuality in Africa on the influence of European civilizations. This placement of fault is wrong, and as further information suggests, has always been a myth. The San Bushmen people of southern Africa immortalized pictures of men having sex with other men, which told stories of their sexual freedoms. Anthropologists including E. Evans Pritchard, who is best known for his work with the Azande culture, have documented several queer acts among natives. According to Evans Pritchard's findings, male warriors would often take on other men to perform duties usually assigned to the wife, which included sexually pleasing their husband, preparing food, and watching children. Often referring to these men as boy wives, Evans Pritchard stated, "Homosexuality is indigenous. Azande do not regard it as at all improper. Indeed, is very sensible for a man to sleep with boys when women are not available or are taboo. In the past, this was a regular practice at court. Some princes may even have preferred boys to women when both were available. This is not a question I can enter into further here, beyond to say that I was told that some princes sleep with boys before consulting poison oracles, women being then taboo, and also that they sometimes do so on other occasions, just because they like them. Nowadays, LGBT views in Africa have completely changed. As of 2020, it is a criminal act in 35 African countries and punishable by a lifetime imprisonment or death in Mauritania, northern Nigeria, southern Somalia, and Sudan. Nigeria has also extended the law to straight family members and friends, anyone who administers witnesses, abets or aids same-sex unions, with at least a 10-year jail sentence. Many leaders believe it is against their culture, religion, and nature, even though history has proven otherwise. Currently, there are 19 African countries where homosexuality is legal. South Africa, the most liberal country, has progressively recognized same-sex marriage and is the only African nation to do so. North America. Before the arrival of the Pilgrims, most Native American tribes clung to the idea of 3 to 4 genders: masculine man, masculine woman, and feminine woman. For cultures such as the Zuni, it did not matter which biological sex a child was born, because the decision of gender identity was made by that person around the age of puberty. Depending on who you asked, early homosexuals were considered two-spirited, lamana or berdache, and had mixed gender roles. Common practices of the lamana included cross-dressing and domestic tasks. Two-spirit people were respected and considered valuable to society. They were thought to be complete human, as they possessed attributes from both sexes. Often healers, spiritual guides, matchmakers, fortune tellers, and artists, the lamana served as sources of intelligence and style. This was because they doubled the work of female-assigned tasks, such as mill work, and performed male duties when warriors went off to battle. Two spirits were men, regarded with respect. However, they were never immune to the law. Like all medicine men, were sometimes accused of witchcraft and killed when the tribe suffered great misfortunes. Since colonization, views on homosexuality have varied based on jurisdiction, but it was unpopular as a whole. Gay rights came into question around 1950 when the Undersecretary of State, James E. Webb, commented on gay men and women, stating, "It is generally believed that those who engage in overt acts of perversion lack the emotional stability of normal persons." Shortly after, homosexuality was considered a mental disorder brought on by scarring parent-child histories and fear of the opposite sex. Celebrity quote: "At some point in our lifetime, gay marriage won't be an issue, and everyone who stood against this civil right will look as outdated as George Wallace standing on the school steps keeping James Hood from entering the University of Alabama because he was Black." George Clooney. The NYPD performed regular sweeps of the neighborhood, where they often arrested and publicly humiliated gays and those that were suspected of gay behavior. Men dressed as women were jailed on sight. Many were fired from their jobs, thrown out of their homes, and placed in mental institutions or prisons. Alternatively, they lived double lives and patronized undercover mafia and mob-owned businesses. These secret bars and clubs were frequent targets for police, but the rich proprietors could often afford to pay off raids. June 28, 1969, reports a significant mark in gay history when a raid went wrong. The Stonewall Inn, a gay bar on Christopher Street, located in the West Village neighborhood of Manhattan, was made famous for being one of the first to allow male-on-male dancing. This rare attraction made enough money to survive raids. One night at Stonewall, tensions between the police, mafia members, and the bar guests boiled with rumors of refusals to pay or a transaction gone wrong. Stonewall Inn was soon raided, and several homosexuals were beaten and detained. However, unlike in previous sweeps, this time the crowd fought back. Pent-up emotions were finally released when pushing and shoving became vandalizing and rioting. Violence spread throughout the streets as glass shattered and fires raged. It was one of the few times police were overrun and forced to retreat. The upheaval sparked several other heated riots and brawls that subsequently occurred.
How to have no fury like a homosexual scorned.
When word had gotten to the press, the news of the riots promoted a need for homosexual unification. The Gay Liberation Front, GLF, was the first organization to boldly form with the mission to protect homosexuals from unjust treatment and prosecution. Support of their peaceful marches grew, and the GLF gained an interesting political platform that commented on discrimination as a whole. This gave room for other gay associations to manifest on a worldwide scale. A year later, on Christopher Street Liberation Day, June 28, 1970, supporters performed the first Gay Pride March, which is now an annual tradition. Celebrity quote: "It is each American's constitutional right to marry the person they love, no matter what state they inhabit. No state should decide who can marry and who cannot." Thanks to the tireless work of so many, someday soon this discrimination will end, and every American will be able to enjoy their equal right to marriage. Brad Pitt. In the United States, the availability of legally recognized same-sex marriage expanded from one state in 2004 to all 50 states in 2015 through various state and federal court rulings, state legislation, and direct popular votes. As of June 26, 2015, all 50 U.S. states recognize gay marriage. Adoption rules vary by state based on marriage laws. However, there are states that have the option of a same-sex union, which offers some but not all of the legal advantages that pertain to marriage. It is not ideal, but it is certainly a step in the right direction. East Asia. Homosexuality in East Asia has existed long since the country's written word. Ancient Asian art revealed recurring intimate relationships between homosexuals with the same regard as it did with straight couples. Gayness in males was referenced in poetry and stories as the bitten peach, and was as neutral as the words for wind or water. It has always been a norm in China, and some literature has even expressed the act as more pleasurable than heterosexual relationships. Favored among emperors and other great leaders, the practice of bisexuality was never frowned upon until some debate Western influence. In the 20th century, the Republic of China prohibited sodomy altogether, and it became punishable by jail time. This ban wasn't lifted until 1997, and by 2001, homosexuality was no longer considered a mental illness. In 2018, China took LGBT rights a step further and prohibited sexual orientation reversal therapy. Like China, Japan had similar views in regard to alternative lifestyles. In fact, some Buddhist organizations were well known for same-sex interactions, and non-Buddhist religions showed no criticism. Male relationships were considered sacred and honored. Older traditions supported male bonding and respected it as an eternal commitment. Commonly, samurai warriors would take on a younger male apprentice. Through the practice of Shudo, these two would share a lifelong bond and defend each other during life-threatening missions. They were also known to be lovers. Free to also engage in heterosexual interactions, the apprentice could find other mates, but never divert from his master until he came of skill and age. In 1872, anal sodomy was banned in Japan and revoked only 8 years later. Japan now provides laws that protect gay and transgender people. Political history notes Aya Kamikawa as the first transgender elected official to take seat at the Setagawa Ward in Tokyo. An example of prestige to her class, she was re-elected in 2007 and based her work on protecting the rights of women, children, persons with disabilities, and of course the LGBT community. Though the government continued to consider her a male, she announced she will always work as a woman. Celebrity quote, discussing New York legalizing gay marriage. I was stoked that happened. We're people and we're different, all of us, and we should be using our differences to bring ourselves closer together, you know? Not be afraid of something that we don't know. It's unfortunate that things take a while to progress like this, but it was a great, great victory for equality. I'm proud New York has the balls to stand up for what's right. Justin Timberlake. Europe. Not many can argue the rampant homosexuality in ancient Greece. Most emperors of Rome and other regions were reported to take on male lovers. Mythology told many stories surrounding male bonds, which famously included Achilles and Patroclus, Hercules and Abderus, and Apollo the Greek god with the Spartan prince Hyacinthus. Greek views on sexuality had less to do with gender and focused more on passive and possessive roles. For example, regardless of who was engaging in intercourse, the penetrator was always thought to be more masculine and of higher social status, while the penetrated was considered submissive and more feminine. Greek myth, Zeus and Ganymede. According to legend, Tros of Troy had a son named Ganymede, who was said to be one of the most attractive boys at that time. Ganymede grew up to be a sheep herder, and even the mighty Zeus admired his beauty. One day, while he tended to his animals, a giant eagle flew down in the midst of a sudden thunderstorm. The eagle captured Ganymede and revealed himself as the mighty god once they got to Mount Olympus. Infatuated with his new lover, Zeus granted Ganymede immortality and made him the cupbearer to the gods. All the gods were said to applaud Ganymede's grace, except for Hera, Zeus's wife. She insisted her husband's love for the man was tiresome and was extremely jealous. Like any good father would, Tros became grief-stricken over his missing son. Understanding his loss, Zeus sent Hermes with magical horses that would never die and could walk on water. Hermes explained to Tros that his son was now the cupbearer of the gods, and Zeus hoped that these horses would ease the pain. But he wasn't getting Ganymede back. Ganymede was said to live a happy life. Zeus was so appreciative of his love that he eventually placed him among the stars as the constellation Aquarius, the water-bearer. Though homosexual couples, such as Pausanias of Athens and poet Agathon, were accepted, masculinity was a prized quality, and feminine men were socially ridiculed. In the past, manliness was equated with power. History tells that Roman soldiers were prohibited from marriage under Augustus, but were allowed to have sexual relations with male slaves and prostitutes. Same-sex relations between soldiers were strictly outlawed, as it was believed that a penetrated man lost his masculinity and should not be a soldier.
Ancient don't ask, don't tell. Whoever said history doesn't repeat itself?
Once Christianity became the official faith of Rome, social opinions about same-sex unions turned sour and became punishable by death. Such murders included burning and public castration of both partners. Sodomy became a huge crime in Europe and was only decriminalized by Poland in 1932. As time passed, Sweden, like many countries in Europe, included homosexuality on its mental illness list until 1979, when hundreds of residents called out sick from work because they felt gay. Only a few months later, homosexuality was removed from this list, and in 2009, the Church of Sweden gave its blessing to homosexual couples, including supportive marriage. The Netherlands was the first European country to recognize gay marriage, and now as of 2019, 18 out of 44 European countries have legalized same-sex marriage. Another 11 recognize civil unions but not marriage. The remaining 22, including the Vatican, does not support same-sex marriage or civil unions. Middle East. Thought to be an affront to Allah, homosexuality has been illegal for centuries in nearly all of the Islamic states, chiefly those that maintain Sharia-based criminal laws. Believed to be brought on by Western influence, the crime is still punishable by death in Afghanistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. Few laws exist preventing hate crimes or discrimination against LGBT people, though Sudan, which formally recognized homosexuality as a capital offense, revised its legislature in 2020 to ban the death penalty, as well as flogging. Same-sex relations continue to be a very touchy subject, as governments have been accused of secretly trying to exterminate their gay communities, while others claim these arrests and deaths were made based on rape and drug trafficking violations. Homosexuality was legalized in Israel in 1988, and in 1992, same-sex couples were allowed to adopt children and join the military. The magazine Out has considered Israel the gay capital of the Middle East, as they annually celebrate Pride and continue to make powerful strides in a more accepting direction. Even though punishments of stoning, torture, imprisonment, and even death are possible, there are still gay individuals who take the risk. In 2005, Saudi police arrested 110 men for attending a secret gay wedding party. Gays are known to collect around certain malls and grocery stores, and these gay hotspots are subject to government raids. Because the crime of homosexuality needs no evidence or trial, legal enforcers have conducted murder on the assumption of homosexuality alone.